What's up, everyone? Thralls here once again. I'm the Crockneck, and we're going to go over some more underrated albums. We're going to do some more Grindcore just because I fucking love Grindcore, and I think that's enough of a reason. And again, underrated might not be the most apt name for Grindcore because it's fiercely underground anyway. But that's what I call the series, and there's definitely tons of stuff out there that just kind of goes unnoticed or flies on the radar anyway. So, let's get on some grind. Liberteer, better to die on your feet than live on your knees. Now this is a one-off project from Matthew Widener from Cretan. He does pretty much everything on here, and this is a really wild approach to grindcore. It is definitely grind at its heart, but there's a lot of melody on here, and even some kind of epic keyboards scattered in here, and even all the lead work has kind of a melodic tone. I even dare say that some of this stuff on here sounds happy, which is not a thing I would associate with grindcore. Generally, it's pissed off all the time. Now, I'm sure, of course, the lyrics are very focused on hostility towards whatever, but the melody is definitely worth noting because it is a very interesting approach to this. Really like this album. It is an interesting project. Hopefully he does this one again. I know Cretan's still going, and members of Cretan are also in Repulsion, so this may have been tabled in favor of doing more stuff with those bands. But I'd like to hear this come back because this is just a really interesting approach to grindcore in general. Check it out. Defeatist, Sixth Extinction. Now this is a grindcore band from New York City. They were around from 2005 to 2011, and they only had 2 full lengths. And this is just very raw, very hardcore influenced grindcore. I have to say the vocals are a bit one note. They kind of stay in one kind of standard flat scream. It could use a little variance up and down maybe. But overall, it's just very hostile, in-your-face grindcore, nice gritty production to it. Pretty much checks all the boxes. Definitely not on the level of like Napalm Death or anything like that, but still really good stuff. I don't have their other full length. I do have a compilation of the other stuff, which was also really good. But I'm going to have to actually find their other full length as well because this was pretty solid. And if you like grindcore, definitely check it out. Primate, Draw Back a Stump. Now this is technically almost a grind supergroup. This features Bill Keller from Mastodon and Kevin Sharp from Brutal Truth, as well as members from Magruder Grind and Despise You. That's a pretty solid lineup. Now this is a really cool grindcore act that actually favors the more punk side of grind. Like this kind of borders more on crust punk, but there's also elements of hardcore and even some crossover thrash in spots in this. These songs are ridiculously catchy, and a lot of it is due to Bill's guitar work on here. You can still hear like the almost Mastodon-like riffs that are in here, and they create some solid hooks. I really love the fact they cover Black Flag on here. They did Drinking and Driving, which they absolutely fucking nail. This is a solid album. Again, just because of the members in here and how busy those other members are, more than likely this might just be a one-off, but if you've never heard it, definitely check this out because this is just a flat-out fun listen. Since doing this list, I pretty much rediscovered this one and I've been jamming the shit out of it, and again, this is just fun to listen to, flat out. Love to see Brutal Truth get back together too, but I don't know if that's ever going to happen. Still, this is fucking sweet. Check it out. Mumakil, Behold the Failure. Now, I have been pronouncing this band's name wrong for ever since I found them. I used to think it was just Mumakil. This is actually a reference to Lord of the Rings, so yeah, metalheads are nerds too, and that's why we love you. This album is fucking relentless. They actually called their music Blastcore, quote unquote. I can definitely see why, because this is pretty much blasts almost non-stop. There are some cool groovy pockets in here. This is just full-on, in-your-face grindcore, pretty much like Nawsome on meth. It's constantly going. Now this band unfortunately broke up in 2017. They were only around from 2004 to 2017, but they put out some really killer albums. I think this one was one of their best. They even throw in a nice giant yeehaw at the beginning of the song Useless Fucks, which is awesome. There is a little bit of a death metal influence to it, and even some kind of thrashy riffs to it. All in all, I just love the non-stop energy of this album. It is constantly just fucking going at a relentless pace. And as much as I like nice little groovy pockets and breaks, I like seeing a band push their limits, and they just went fucking nuts on this. But then, if you've ever jammed any of their albums, they go fucking nuts on all their albums. But this one is fucking killer. Definitely check it out. Dishammer, Vintage Addiction. This is this band's only full-length album. It came out in 2008. They were only around from 2006 to 2011. And they describe their sound as crustcore, which I guess that's a thing. I would just call it crust punk, but they also threw in elements of thrash metal, like very kind of crossover thrash metal, or like really kind of just gritty bare bones thrash metal. Kind of reminds me of like a crust punk version of Toxic Holocaust. I love the overall sound of this because it sounds as though it's unmastered. It sounds like a live recording in the studio. The only thing that sounds maybe a little bit more tweaked are the vocals because they're kind of pushed out front, and they definitely sound like they have a little bit of compression on them. A lot of cool thrashy riffs on here, but it's definitely more on the crust punk side. Now, this isn't necessarily grindcore, but crust punk is kind of under that umbrella, and this definitely has that sort of grind energy. There's definitely a lot of short tracks on here, and that pretty much, you know, fuck it punk attitude that I love so much. There's even a little touch of like classic heavy metal, especially in the last track, the title track, Vintage Addiction. It's raw, it's got a cool gritty guitar tone. If you're into any of that sort of shit, definitely check this band out. It's a fucking good time. Machetazo, Trono de Huesos. I think that's how I said that. If not, I'm sorry. This was their second full length. They were a grindcore / deathgrind band from Spain. They were around from 1994 to 2014, and for most of their early releases, I think it wasn't until the next release they put out, they didn't actually have lyrics. It was pretty much just whatever the frontman wanted to growl his guts out about. And it was really cool. They actually had that kind of high-low dynamic, and there's definitely some cool death metal riffs on here. Definitely reminds me a lot of early Brutal Truth and Terrorizer. I like the fact that they included some cool horror samples in there. Not quite to the level of Mortician, but still used pretty appropriately. And there's also a really cool grindcore cover of Ace of Spades, which honestly they do a great job of. It's just ridiculous. It's super over the top. Now this isn't the original version. This is a reissue that came out on Dementia Records a while ago. I can't remember the actual date, and it's not listed on here. Oh well. I have one other release by these guys, but this is the one that I really like, and I still have to get all their other stuff too. But yeah, if you're looking for some nasty, solid grind / death grind, definitely check this one out. It's badass. Call the Void, Dragged Down a Dead End Path. This was their debut album, came out in 2013, and unfortunately this band just broke up last year, which I was really bummed by because these guys are awesome. Now this is definitely more on the hardcore side of grind. It's kind of grind, kind of hardcore, bits of power violence in there, lots of dissonance. There's even some kind of blackened touches here and there. It's very similar to a band like Enabler or even Nails. I would even say there's even bits of crust punk in here too. This is just insanely heavy, insanely driven, raw, dissonant. There's even a really fair amount of atmosphere in here too, which you don't get a ton of in grindcore. It's generally on to the next beatdown. These guys actually kind of, you know, separate the songs a little bit with squealing dissonance and shit, and that's a really cool effect overall. I have all their other releases except for one, which is coming in the mail, and I can't wait for it just because that's the last one, unfortunately. Really wish these guys would come back because they put out some killer albums. All their albums are awesome, but this was their start, and Jesus Christ, this thing was a monster. Check it out. Bastard Feast, Osculum Infame. Now this band used to be known as Elitist, and then they changed their name after releasing one album in 2011, and unfortunately this band has been on hold since 2015. This is the only full length they have. This is a really raw mix of crust punk, grindcore, death grind, even some black metal in here too. Lots of atmosphere, just heavy as hell. Like this is just an absolute nasty release. The drumming on here is absolutely unhinged. This feels like a mix between a band like Nails and Converge. And it pretty much just beats the shit out of you from track to track. Except for the last track. The last track they actually kind of wrote a longer track that's almost more like noisy post-metal. Like a blackened version of Neurosis. Which was kind of a cool break on here. But overall this is just about delivering quite possibly some of the heaviest, crustiest, dirtiest shit imaginable, and mission accomplished. In fact, you guys need to get back to this because I fucking missed this. This is a cool fucking listen, and I need more of this. Check these guys out. Murder Construct. This is their self-titled EP that came out in 2011. Now this is technically a supergroup. This features Travis Ryan of Cattle Decapitation on vocals, Leon de Muerte, who was in Exhumed at the time, and Danny Walker, who was also in Exhumed at the time of this, and was also in Intronaut. These guys only had this EP and one full length. I thought the full length was good, but not nearly as awesome as this. This is very technical death grind, awesome writing on here, lots of surprisingly catchy songs, lots of really gorgeous melodies. And then you have Travis Ryan doing his insane vocals. Now, he doesn't do his cleaner vocals. I really wouldn't necessarily call them clean vocals. But he does, of course, his amazing growls and the highs and lows. And that dude just do pretty much about anything vocally, it seems. As long as it's extreme as fuck. This even has some, like, interesting samples thrown in there, and maybe even some Middle Eastern influences in some of the songs. This is very adventurous death grind, and it definitely showcases what all these members were capable of. I kind of have a thing with supergroups where most of the time it seems like some of the parts don't equal the whole, and on this EP, it definitely did. The follow-up full length, it was okay. I thought it was good, it just didn't match the intensity of this album. Definitely check this out. It's a quick listen, but it's a fucking beatdown from start to finish. And finally we have Insect Warfare, World Extermination. Now, at least in grindcore circles, I don't think this is a very underrated album, but I had to bring this one up because I think this is one of the best one-off grindcore albums out there. This is their only full length. They had splits and compilations, but this was the only one that ever came out as a full length. This came out in 2009 on Earache Records, and this is just vicious from start to finish. Now, unfortunately, this band broke up not too long after this release, and now a couple of the members are actually in Malignant Altar, which will be on Maryland Death Fest next year. I believe they were one of the bands retained for sure. But man, do I miss this. This is practically a perfect fucking grindcore album. It is raw, it's in your face, it wastes no time just beating the shit out of you. Lots of catchy riffs. The vocals are particularly nasty on this. I love how low the growls are. This reminds me a lot of early Pig Destroyer as far as the style of the music. It's just quick, abrasive, nasty, chuggy riffs and just blasts. It's just fucking glorious. I love this album. There's a lot of Repulsion influence on this too, which Repulsion's fucking amazing as well. In terms of one-off albums, I would put this in a pretty good list as well, just because this was absolutely killer, and I was bummed to find out that they broke up. I would love to see a reunion of this band just because I imagine this live performance is absolutely insane. Definitely check this one out. It is a fucking glorious piece of grind. Alright, well that knocks out another chapter of underrated albums. Not sure where we're going to move on to next. Might go over some melodic death metal. Really haven't touched on that much. Still have doom metal and stoner metal. Either way, I'm sure I can find some cool underground gems for you guys to check out. And it's pretty much just fun talking about metal anyway. So, if you guys like the video, give it a thumbs up. And if you are new to the channel, subscribe because we do shit like this all the time. Catch you guys later.